This is Michael Saltman, and I am the Director of Digital Product at Blue Sky Bio. In this tutorial video, I'm going to demonstrate the process of creating a bridge supported by prepared teeth, and we'll also see the process of creating multiple crowns for the same case. I'm using version 4.7.53 of the Blue Sky Plan software. The most significant update that we have in this release is that you can now not only design crowns and bridges and export them to STL files, but you can also generate the XML configuration file that can be sent to a mill. This functionality is available at no cost, the designing and exporting to STL and to an XML configuration file for milling, and it is going to stay free for quite a long time. So you can use Blue Sky Plan moving forward for all your crown and bridge needs. And of course, if you want some help or you're short on time, either with designing or the fabrication or both, labpronto.com is your address for all your digital dental needs. Okay, I'm going to start the process by clicking on Crown and Bridge. The process that we're going to be doing, we're going to break down into 4 parts. The first part being importing and aligning the data set. The second part being positioning and designing the teeth. The third part, generating the crowns, and the fourth part, of course, creating the bridge. I'm going to select the option for bridge, and I'm going to navigate to my relevant data set. I have the shortcut buttons on the top. I'm going to click desktop, and then my data set bridge for conventional crown. I can see a preview of the STL file on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm going to multi-select by holding down the Shift key and clicking the second file as well, and then clicking OK. The software automatically brings up the model alignment screen, displaying the different models that I selected. Because we're going to be building crowns and bridge for the upper arch, I'm going to select the upper model. On the right side, confirm maxilla, dentate the relevant choices, and then click Continue to Alignment on the bottom right. I'm going to follow the image that we have on the top right. I'm going to place 3 dots to create a horizontal plane. The first dot on a cusp of a posterior molar, the second dot as close to the midline as possible, and the third dot on the opposing molar opposing cusp from the first dot. And once I've placed the 3 dots, the software aligns the model to the grid automatically. The grid can be toggled on and off, and orientation can be changed if needed. Pressing continue takes us to the next step. In this step, I could use the widget to fine-tune the alignment if needed, or I could grab and drag the model with my left mouse button. In this situation, I'll make a very slight modification to align it here. And I have the ability of modifying the alignment while viewing just one model, or I could show all the models I imported and move them together. Either way, I'm essentially moving or realigning all the models. It's just a question if you're making the adjustments while viewing one model or multiple models. The grid and the widget can be toggled on and off. Clicking Finish completes our first step of importing and aligning our data sets. We're going to continue with our second step of aligning and designing the teeth by clicking Continue to Bridge Design and clicking Add Teeth in the horizontal toolbar. We have a variety of different teeth libraries, including several new ones, so you go ahead and check them out. I'm going to multi-select by holding down my Shift key and selecting the relevant teeth. The tooth that's marked in bright red is the tooth that is going to be placed where I left click, and the other teeth will be placed accordingly. Select the relevant general tooth size and click OK. I'm able to use my left mouse button to rotate the models, and when I want to drop the tooth and the subsequent teeth into place, hold down the Shift key and left click in the desired location. All of the teeth are dropped in together, and they're able to be moved and rotated together. We also have the ability, let's turn off the opposing arch. We also have the ability by going to the teeth edit panel and using the scale slider to resize all the teeth together. Once I have my first tooth in place, I'm also able to realign the slider itself by using the small arrow, and I can move the slider and the point of rotation over so that I can now swing the other teeth together while keeping my first tooth in place, essentially creating that as being the hinge to swing the other teeth. Once you've generally placed the teeth together and resized them and put them in their general location, you could click Manipulate Model and then edit the placement of each tooth individually. While doing so, you can right-click on a tooth and click Toggle Transparency. You can also right-click on a model and click Toggle Transparency. So we could go ahead now and fine-tune the placement of each tooth individually. You should also keep in mind that you can use the node attached to the widget to resize a tooth, but you are also able to use the different editing tools to edit the teeth. There are two ways of connecting the teeth to create a bridge. One is if there is an overlap and the teeth are touching, then the bridge will be created based on that overlap. If there is a separation between the teeth, as small as that separation might be, the software will allow the user to design a connection in order to generate the bridge. I've positioned and resized my teeth, and I'm sure the design professionals watching this video could do a much better job. I'm going to use some of the tools that we have here in order to edit the teeth. Here I'll use Add Remove Material. I'm holding down the Shift key, using my left mouse button to make the tool size a little bit bigger here, and holding down Shift, left mouse button, and we can see how that fills in the tooth. We could use the same tool to add some material over here. We could also use other tools that we have, the Global Geometry Reform. I'm just grabbing the nodes with my left mouse button and pulling them however I want to adjust. Okay, we could turn on the opposing arch and see how the teeth align with the opposing arch. If we need to edit the teeth, we could do so directly through the opposing arch. I'll click Add Remove Material, and with my Control key and left mouse button, I could go ahead, if needed, and just slightly reduce the tooth here. Okay, so keep in mind that you have the tool size and the strength for all of the tools. Okay, you can toggle transparency on and off for the jaws and for the teeth. To adjust the placement of a tooth ever so slightly, then you could use the arrows on your keyboard to actually nudge the tooth in whatever direction you like. If you do any action that you want to undo or redo, you could use the undo and redo arrows. If you want to temporarily hide a surface or a tooth, you could do so via the surface list. I've intentionally left a space between the two teeth here so that we could see when we create the bridge how we go ahead and create the connection for that bridge. Let's pretend that I've perfectly positioned, designed these teeth, and let's go on to the process of creating the relevant crowns. I'm going to switch to the Restoration Design panel, confirm conventional crown, maxilla. I'm going to pay attention, make sure I'm selecting the correct model. Let's start with the canine, and the antagonist is the lower arch. I click Start, define the margin line. I do so holding down the Shift key and left clicking to place dots, and as I continue to place the dots, the software connects the dots, going around back to the starting point. And when I get very close to the starting point, I just continue to hold down the left mouse button and drag that dot to intersect with the first dot. If I want to improve or modify the curve, then I could just hold down my shift key, use my left mouse button, and just grab and drag, and the curve adjusts automatically. Okay, once I'm happy with the curve, I go ahead and click on Next. Path of insertion I can modify by using the widget with the arrow, or I can position the path of insertion on screen and then click Set Insertion Direction from View and update it that way. With the bridge, of course, when we get to the step of creating the bridge, we'll be removing all the undercuts from all the teeth, so the bridge could be placed properly onto the prepared teeth. Define a proximal area. If there is an existing intact adjacent tooth, then you just hold down the shift key and use your left mouse button to indicate that. If there isn't, or if there's only one tooth, then you indicate the one tooth. If there are no adjacent intact teeth, then you don't indicate anything, and then you just click the Next button. The software creates the crown bottom, and we have all of our different sliders here. Just to explain, overview quickly what it is. The crown cement spacer is the amount of space between the crown and the substructure. No cement gap is the height on the base of the crown where there is no gap, where it's a flush, complete connection between the crown and the substructure. Horizontal, angled, and angle, you could see as you move the slider how it affects the connection of the base of the crown to the substructure and the shape of it. And the minimal thickness defines the required minimal thickness that the software will use when creating the crown. If you want to hide the minimal thickness, then just hide it. Otherwise, the software will indicate in red any violation of the minimal thickness. I'm clicking Next. The software is showing me the violations of the minimal thickness. I could either move the tooth, or I could use any of the tools. Right now I'll use Add Remove. I'll hold down my Shift key, use my left mouse button to add a bit of material here to the tooth to remove the violations of the minimal thickness. I could use also Local Deform if I want, select the relevant tool size, and just left mouse button and Shift just allows me to grab and drag and to reshape accordingly. Okay, once I'm happy with that, click Next. In the last step of the crown creation process, the software shows any intersections, occlusal or proximal intersections. If I want the software to cut them away automatically, I can leave the checkbox checked. If it doesn't bother me and I want to leave the tooth as is, I could uncheck those checkboxes. Once again, I have the ability to use the editing tools if I want to make any final modifications, and then click Next. What the software has done at this point is it's created another surface on the list. D is for designed, so if you have D maxillary custom crown, that's the crown that we just created. Our original tooth is on the list, hidden automatically as we have the designed one, but we could see what we've created. And here is the crown that we've created. So to continue with the process, we could design 2 more crowns in a very similar process. Click the Start button. Now we have Continue Planning Restoration or Plan New Restoration. We're going to select Plan New Restoration. We're not modifying the previous restoration that we created. And I'll go through this quickly. Defining the margin curve by holding down the Shift key and left clicking as you go around defining the curve. When you get back to the close to the starting point, you grab and drag that left dot while holding down the Shift key and your left mouse button to close the curve. If you need to edit anything, then just Shift and left mouse button and go ahead and grab and drag. We can modify the path of insertion, and just to reiterate, when we create the bridge, the software will automatically remove all the undercuts for all the teeth so the bridge could be inserted correctly. Define a proximal area. In this situation, there are no intact adjacent teeth, so I'm going to skip that. Crown bottom, we could see how the software has generated it. I'm going to keep the settings as is for now. I see my minimal thickness being violated. I'm going to use the local deform. I'm going to make my tool size a bit large. And here I'm able to just raise the surface and doing so we're keeping most of the contour of the tooth intact, just solving the minimal thickness issues. Okay, next I see my intersections. I'll leave that as they are for now. And we've created our second crown. And we can run through the process one more time quickly together. Conventional crown, maxilla, first molar, plan new restoration. Every time you plan a new crown, you choose plan new restoration. Margin, by using shift and the left mouse button to place the dots. When I want to rotate, I just let go of shift and use my left mouse button to grab and drag. I return towards the starting point, the last button, the last node, I just grab and intersect with the first node to close the curve. Let's keep the path of insertion. A proximal area, we are going to mark the adjacent tooth. The crown bottom for now we'll keep with the default settings. Let's solve the minimal thickness just by adding some material here. Shift and left mouse button. Took care of that. Intersections are fine. And we could see now that we've generated our 3 crowns. And this will be converted into our bridge. We are going to create the bridge by clicking Create Bridge. Okay, we have to have one model on and intact. Let's try that again. So as we discussed earlier on, there's 2 ways of connecting teeth. If there is an overlap between the teeth and the software merges those teeth and creates the connection that way. If there is no separation, as we see here, then the software is going to allow us to design that connection. So the software puts these blue dots into the position of creating the connection, and we click Next. The software creates a connection and shows us the dimensions and the volume of that connection. Any of these blue dots can be grabbed and dragged and repositioned. We can also hold down the Shift key, grab one of these nodes, and we can see how it increases the volume of the connection connecting to the tooth. If we wanted to move the connection, we hold down the Shift key, left mouse button to grab and drag that middle ring. And if we wanted to enlarge it, we hold down the Control key and use our left mouse button to grab and drag. So to summarize, the Shift key will enlarge the connection to the tooth for both of the outside rings. The Shift key will move the inside ring as a unit, and the Control key will enlarge that inside ring. And as we go ahead and make any changes, we could see the dimensions and the volume being updated automatically. Once I have my connection designed and I'm happy with it, I click Next. The connection is generated by the software. We could use our editing tools as we had before to go ahead and to make any improvements or modifications. If we wanted to increase the size of the connection, we could use our local deform and go ahead and make the relevant modifications. Once I'm happy with my designed connection, I click Next. Here we're able to adjust the path of insertion for the entire bridge together. Once I'm happy with the path of insertion, I click Next. we could see in our surfaces list that the software has now generated for us the bridge. Granted, it is not the most beautiful bridge, but I think we've demonstrated the different functionality and capabilities in this video. The last step, of course, is to go to the Restoration Design panel, click Export. We have our long list of different surfaces. What we're going to export is the bridge. We're going to make sure the CAM column is checked, because that is what's going to generate our XML configuration file, and then click Export. Let's create a folder on the desktop, bridge, and let's save the file there. If we take a look at our folder, we have the bridge which we chose to export as an STL file, and we also have our XML CAM construction file that can be used for milling the bridge.